Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And in all your gettings, get understanding. Now, get ready as I take you on a journey into practical insights for living.
Hello there. Welcome to another episode on the Luminary podcast. A brand new series, actually. A brand new series. Yes, I want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the previous series, A Billion Streams? A Billion Streams. What are your thoughts? I still want to see your comments. You can still, listen again. I want to hear your comments. You can use the follow button to get notifications, and I want you to share it with somebody. Share it with somebody. If you found value from the previous episodes, I want you to share it with somebody. Just share with somebody that you know needs to listen to that entire series. Just share an episode with them. All right, so yes, God's businessman. God's businessman. So there are questions that are actually hanging around the concept of God and the marketplace. Questions around what is God's intent about the marketplace. Does God care about what goes on in the industries and the global marketplace? What are his interests? What are his agenda for that space? What does God expect believers to do? How does he expect believers to function in that space? What are the advantages, the systems that God has put in place to provide a leverage for believers in the secular space? In what ways can I practically play my part in the secular space, functionally and actively representing God, representing God's interest, God's agenda in that space? How can I partner with the flow of God's operation in that sphere? How can I practically operate and function in my space, run my business, function in my career as a joint partner with God? How can I have God as my senior stakeholder in the secular space, as my senior partner in the secular space? How do I do that? How do I function in a way that there is a synergy between myself and God in the secular space? How do we do that? Now, this is a question that silently rests in the heart of believers. Quite a lot of believers. And it's a clear start that way over 90%, in fact, I dare to say way over 98% of believers have major expressions, interactions, involvement, or engagements within the secular space. So it means if God works all things according to the counsel of his will, God works things even before they come to appear, it means he's got to have a plan for the secular space. Him knowing that 98%, way over 98% of believers are going to be actively in this space. He must have a plan. He's got to have planned something. He's got to have put some systems in place. So the question is, what are these systems? What are these ways, these principles that God must have put in place for vital functioning in that sphere? Is it just faith? Is it praying? Is it believing? Is it just hoping that, okay, I'm a believer and then I'll surely get an unfair advantage? Where does this start? What's the premise for that advantage in the first place? So yes, that's what this series is going to be about. It's about to be a very interesting journey, quite a stretched one. I foresee a very, very numerous number of episodes, sequel to this introductory episode. So you are in for a long ride, very long ride, and you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be a major one. It's going to be a major series. So let's get into it. So, do business till I return. Interesting. Sounds like a popular phrase for church folks, for Christian folks. Do business till I return. And it was coined out of the book of Luke, chapter 19, where it was mentioned that, there was a parable of a man that came from a royal house. He needed to take a long trip back to his headquarters to get authorization for his rule and then return back. And then before he went on his trip, he had to call his 10 servants together, give each one of them a sum of money and instructed them and said, operate with this till I return. Trade with this till I return. Do business with it till I return. So he was planning to go on a trip, right? He wanted to see these people do something with the resource that he has put in their hands. He wanted them to do business with it. He wanted them to occupy a domain, a territory with it. He wanted them to make use of it. He said, make use of it till I come. Occupy till I come. Do business with it till I come. Do business with it till I return. Work with this. Put this money to work till I return. Invest this for me while I'm gone. So, do business till I return. That has a business connotation, right? And when we say business here, when I'm saying business here, we're still going to get into it, what business is. It's not just about entrepreneurship. Business is not just about entrepreneurship, being a CEO. That's not what business is, actually. So just to make it simple, business is any labor that brings profit. Any labor at all that brings profit. That's business. So the fact that you move out of your house to go somewhere to speak to somebody with the hope that it would produce a profit, that is business. Any labor at all that brings any form of profit, financial profit, emotional profit, spiritual profit, relational profit, health profit is business. So you don't have to be a CEO, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to do business. In fact, if you're under an employment, you're employed somewhere, what you are doing right there is business. Why? You are putting something to work. You are putting a resource to work to the end that it would profit. It would bring a profit. To the end that it would yield more than you were given in the first place. So this man in the parable that was trying to take a trip back to his headquarters, and then he called the servants and gave them money, gave them a resource. His hope was that they would invest it. He said, invest this for me while I'm gone. Put this money to work while I'm gone. Meaning I'm expecting to not meet it the way I gave you. I'm expecting an increase, a profit. And that's the business mindset there. There's a part of scripture that says, in all labor there is profit. In all labor there is profit. So it means in every labor that there is profit, we can call that labor business. Every activity you engage in that there is profit, any form of profit at all. That's what business is. That's practically what business is. So a farmer is a businessman. The fact that you are working within a corporate organization that is doing business makes it that you are doing business. A receptionist is doing business. They are committing resources to you. They are committing intellectual property to you. Your company is committing softwares, access, information to you, not for the fun of it. They are doing that to an end so that you do something with it. You pull these things together to create something that would produce a profit, an increase. And that's what business is. That's what business is about. So business is not limited to entrepreneurship or being an entrepreneur. It's not limited to being the head of an enterprise, a CEO, the founder of a business or anything like that. Because business is anything you do that produces profit. So now that we've established that, you understand that when he said, do business till I return, when that man taking a trip said, do business till I return. That's God talking to virtually every believer. It's not a statement to businessmen. He's talking to every believer, every believer. He's not talking to business owners, as it were, or talking to people that have started businesses. He's talking to every believer. He's saying, do business till I return. Meaning he's expecting you to draw more out of what he gave you. He's saying, can you make more out of what I have given you? And that's practically what God put into man in Genesis. Now, when we say God blessed man in Genesis, be fruitful, multiply, he's saying, bring more out of something. When you say you are a creator, that God has made us, God is a creator, and he has made us, creators too, having the ability to create something. Our own sphere or scope of creation is that we can bring more out of something. But God's exclusive preserve of creation is that he can bring something out of nothing. So we're not in the same class. We're not on the same plane of operation when it comes to creating. Yes, we create. We are meant to create. We have that nature of God, and we are meant to create. That ability to create is there. But God creates something out of nothing. And he expects us to bring more out of this something that he has created. That's a very, very, very important distinction to make there. So he has created something out of nothing so that we can make more come out of something. So the part of creating something out of nothing is not given to man. It's not given to us. That's God's exclusive reserve. So God is not expecting you to bring something out of nothing. No. He has no such expectations. But he's expecting you to bring more out of what he has given you, out of what already exists. And that is what business is. So from the first chapter of Genesis, you can see the business-mindedness of God. Bring profit out of that which already exists. So I said all that to put you, to put perspective to the title God's Businessman. So you understand what the title means. The title of this series, God's Businessman, is not for business people. I need to settle that so that you know what you are up for, you know what you are set up for. So as far as there's an expectation on you to produce profit from what you are doing, either in the secular or spiritual space, you are God's businessman. You are God's businessman. So he's counting on you for a profit, for a reward, an increase. So if it was just one unit of resource, he's expecting to come back and find 3. If it was 5, he's expecting to come back and find 10. So you are God's businessman. If you are a believer, you are God's businessman. I feel like saying that again. You are God's businessman. Can you see yourself as God's businessman? Because that's what you are. So now that we have established that, I'd like to mention something equally important. I would even dare to say more important. I want to make a very important statement in the entirety of this episode. And that statement is that God is business-minded. God is business-minded. There is the business-mindedness of God. It's scattered all over scriptures. It's scattered all over creation. Just study how he designed creation. You see that God is business-minded. He's profit-minded. You see him, give up his son with the end that more sons will come. You see him come to people and ask, what have you done with what I gave you? So with any resource, any commitment, any investment, any gifting at all that he gives to any man, there's a business-mindedness behind it. I call it the business-mindedness of God. Now, there's a profound example of this. I'll give you an example. A very profound evidence of that is in Matthew, the book of Matthew, chapter 16, the 26th verse. It says, "For what is a man's profit if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?" Look at that. You can see the word gain and lose. Those are business terminologies, practical business terminologies. He's saying you are drawing up your business statement, and then on one end there's the profit, the gain, and then on the other side there's the loss. And on the gain side is the whole world. On the loss side there is the man's soul. He said, what would that man give in exchange for his soul? That's trade, exchange. That's trade. That's trade in practical terms. What will he give in exchange for his soul? Meaning that there's nothing a man can give in exchange for his soul. But that's not where I'm going. What I want to say is that it's the fact that if you put on the scale the whole world and the soul of a man, that if a man gains the whole world with all the wealth and resources in it, with all the glamour, the weight of substance in the world, the whole world, think about that, the whole world, put it on one side of the scale as profit, and in order to get that profit, there's a cost, and that cost, that thing that you lose, is your soul. God is saying you just made a loss. That's terrible business. God is saying that's not profitable. That's not profitable business. So it means from God's lens, from God's perspective, just one man, the soul of one man is far more valuable than the entire world. The entire world. Think about the vastness of the earth. And God is saying the soul of one man put on a scale beside the earth is worth more. Meaning if you gain your soul and lose the whole world, you are at a profit. And if you gain the whole world and lose your soul in the process, you are at a loss. It's God is saying, for example, if you're trying to get food that is worth $10, and in the process of getting that food, you were so desperate and focused and ready to do anything to the point at which you lost your car. You crashed your car in the process, but you eventually got the food and you ate the food. You are so happy about it. Did you make profit? No, you made a loss. You made a practical loss, a very foolish loss. But did you get the food? Yes. But putting the two on a scale, weighing it side by side, Matthew 16:26 is saying that the soul of just one man worth more than the entire earth. God is saying, if you can gain just one man's soul, in contrast with the whole world, it is profit. But even in the process of trying to gain the world, he loses his soul. He's at a loss. It's like the man that's in the process of getting $10 meal, he loses a $10,000 car. That's a loss. He says, what will he gain? What profit is in that? That's business terminology. What will you profit? Profit. Business terminology. If you gain the world's wealth, fame, success, but forfeit your soul, he's saying the opportunity cost is bad. The cost of getting that resource is way more than what you are getting. Just think about the vast highlands, estates, gold, resources that we have on earth. And God is saying one man's soul is worth way more than the combination and aggregate of all those things. That's a heavy statement. That's over 200 countries with trillions of dollars in valuation of wealth is nothing compared to the soul of a man. That if you are making a trade and you give up your soul to get that, you've made a loss. There's no profit in that. That's bad business. So as far as God is concerned, that man is a bad businessman. He should be fired. So we've established that God is business-minded. And it's also important to say that God wants you to also be business-minded. He wants you to be business-minded. He does not just want you to do business. I'll take that again. He does not just want you to do business, to just be active. He wants you to be business-minded. He wants you to be business-minded. And he wants you to be business-minded in the way he's business-minded. We've considered how business-minded he is. We've seen God's business arithmetic. In this grand scheme of things, there are two things: up for trade, the soul of a man, and the resources in the world. So God wants you to be spiritually minded, yes, against being carnally minded. But he also wants you to be business minded, soul business minded. That kind of business mindedness, that's what he wants you to have. That mindset that understands the weight of the soul of a man in contrast to the entire world. That's God's business math. That's his business mindedness. Now, I said all that to say this to you, that there's something you need to know about God. There's something you need to know about his business ethic, his business grit. Now, any successful business person you know, any business-minded person that you know, if you ask them, if you study them just by observation, you would see that there's a level of grit and determination. There's a level of commitment it takes to be profitable and to stay profitable. A very serious one, a sacrificial level of commitment. And God's business-mindedness is not an exception. I mean, people go the length of putting their house on the line to make a business work. They sacrifice family, they sacrifice years and decades in their life to make a business work. They go as far as getting into debt in billions of dollars to make a business work. That's the grit. That's how much grit it takes to make a business work. That's the businessman. That's the business-minded person, right? And God, being a business-minded person, will go any length. He will break any rule to get the soul of a man to himself. I told you already that God's business math is souls in contrast to the entire world. Now, not just souls, in fact, a soul, one soul. That's the interesting part. One soul, just one soul, is worth enough for God to go the greatest of length. So God will do anything to get one soul, just one soul. I mean, think about what he did. He had to become a man such that even if it was just one soul, one person that was on earth, he was willing to become a man and put his life on the line for that one man. Now, there's a statement I made earlier in the last couple of minutes that I would like to repeat again because it's quite important, very important. I want it to stick. I want to see if I can tattoo that into your mind. And what's that statement? It is that God will break any rule, any convention, any natural business rule that you know of. He's willing and ready to break protocols and rules in the marketplace just to get to souls. He is invested with all resource, emotionally invested with passion and grit to do anything. Pull mountains, shake conventions just to get souls. And you need to understand that. You need to see it. You need to see from God's lens. If you truly understand that a man's soul is worth much more than the whole world, truly understanding that, you will see the reason why God is willing to do anything, break any rule, maneuver any protocol to get to a soul. Now imagine how far God is willing to go to get a man. Meaning that in the marketplace, imagine how many souls are there in the marketplace. Quite a sea of souls. I'll call it a sea of souls because it's really a sea. You go out in the morning and you see a sea of heads out to one place of trade, to one place of business or the other. Now it means you being in the marketplace is God's opportunity, God's opportune chance to go after at least a soul. And when he finds half a chance, he will do anything to break the rules, to bypass protocols. He would bypass and defy benchmarks, industry standards, metrics and conditions, requirements that naturally based on facts, data, history, statistics, you have to do this and that for this number of years before you can gain this kind of access, before you can have access to this kind of resource, before you can have this kind of influence. God is saying, I'm willing to break those rules through a man that has my kind of business mindedness. A man that understands the weight of one's soul, how much I'm able to go, how far I'm able to go. So like I said, God is willing to break any rule. He's willing to go any length to defy the natural order of business, to collapse time, to shrink space, to shrink distance, to shrink conditions just for one soul. Now imagine if a man has this perspective, this business-mindedness of God, this God's arithmetic, this God's profit orientation as it concerns the soul of a man. That kind of a man in the marketplace is unstoppable. Why? Though you can see him, behind him is a God that is ready to pull anything down, ready to shrink time, ready to compress space, ready to break through doors, ready to speak to anybody. You need to understand that God is more committed than whatsoever businessman you can think of. Way more willing and more committed than any businessman you know on earth. There's no better businessman than God. Talk of Elon Musk, talk of Jeff Bezos, talk of the great minds, that we have that have really, really, really done exploits in the marketplace. They don't have the grit that God has. They don't have the determination that He has. They don't have the resources to pursue and back that determination. It's one thing to have grit. It's one thing to have the resources to pursue it, to pursue the agenda. And on these two ends, there's no earthly example of a businessman that matches God. So there's no better businessman that has the grit that God has, nor the resources to back that grit. So there's no better businessman. We need to establish that no better businessman than God. If you are looking for the best business to do, the best person to partner with, there's no better businessman than God. So now that we've established that, it means doing business till our return starts with the perspective that God is a businessman. He has a business-mindedness, and He wants you to have that same business-mindedness. And God is actively searching for people with this same mindset. He wants to partner with them. As soon as He finds any, He swings into a joint partnership with that individual. He enters into a joint venture with you. He becomes your senior stakeholder instantly. His interests are now tied to your interests, tied to what you are doing, be it your career, be it your business, anything that would bring profit. He becomes your joint partner automatically. Why? Because you are both after the same thing. He sees that, you see things the way I see it. On a scale of balance, you put a soul on a higher preference compared to the entire world. So when you do that, it's like, let's get ready, let's go. I'm ready to go with you, any length, as far as you want to go. So if you want to take something away from this episode, it is that God will go any length. He will break any rule just to get one soul. So you are his access, you are His channel to reach at least one soul. At least. He will go any length. Now, imagine being committed to going after souls in their numbers. Imagine the amount of resources He's willing and ready to channel your way. The amount of interest, the push, the force that is going to go behind you. This that I'm sharing with you is another superhuman advantage you have in this secular space. So it does not just, start with what you have to say, what you have to give, the branding, the eloquence, the communication, the presentation. There's an attractive force, a magnetic force that pulls the heart of God to you. It instantly draws to you for a partnership. There's practically a God-man partnership. He becomes your senior stakeholder. He becomes the principal investor in what you do. Why? You are pushing his interest. In recent climbs, you would see that investors don't just give you their resources. They don't just, come on board. But once they're on board, they will give you advice. They will give you money. They will introduce you to people, networks, connections. You get support. Some even go as far as giving you, moral support, anything to make the business work. But the only reason they will do that is that what your business is doing and the idea, the ideology behind it aligns with their own perspective, aligns with their own ideology. There are investors that would not invest in you just because, your business is good or you have a nice idea. There are investors that will refuse to invest in your business basically because you have a perspective of enterprise or capitalism that does not align with theirs. And just because of that, not $1 of their money will come to you. So there are investors that would give you, they'll give you millions of dollars basically because you are interested in making the earth greener. You are interested in reducing carbon emissions on Earth. You are interested in making the earth greener. You are reducing the damage to Earth's natural resources. And because of that, because they are also on that course, that's affinity, that resonance between your perspective and their perspective just creates that bond. Now they are ready to work with you. Now, this is the exact way it is with God. God has an ideology. God has a business perspective. There's something that is set at the center of his heart. There's something he's concerned about. Yes, he's concerned about the details and technicalities of the business, but primarily, he's primarily concerned about what's this person's business-mindedness? What's the ideology? Does he have the ideology that is in synergy with the ideology that I have? There's no investor on earth that has as much resource as he has. So let's say to that, there's no human investor. Everything that a human investor has is given to him of God. We are sharing a pool of his resource. He's the owner of the entire pool. So we are cutting a piece of the pizza, a piece of the pie. So imagine the person in charge of the entire pool of resources being committed to you because you magnetized his attention. You got his attention by having the same business-mindedness. And this is the mindedness, the business of souls, the business-mindedness of souls. The business-mindedness of souls. That mindedness that rates a soul above the whole world. This is so profound, so profound. Now, in wrapping up this episode, I want to mention something about the soul of a man. I've been saying something about the soul of a man, and I want to knock something straight into your heart. I really wish you could listen again and again till it sinks into your subconscious. So now, what am I talking about? I want to tell you, I want to ask you a question. Take a wild guess. What's the most valuable resource on earth? Just take a guess. What do you think is the most valuable resource on earth? Think about it. Just do a snappy thought about that. Do a quick overview of all the resources on the earth. Which of them is the most valuable? Interesting question, right? It might take you a while to figure. Well, I put it to you. The most valuable resource on earth is man, the soul of a man. Now, that's not a churchy spiritual statement. I'll show you what I mean. It's not a vague churchy statement. The most valuable resource on earth is man. Now, this is the reason. God has this perspective that one soul is worth more than the entire world. And the reason why he has that perspective is that the most valuable resource for real is a man, is the soul of a man. And I'll show you. I'll give you a very practical, pragmatic example. Now, think about a bank. Think about how valuable a bank is. Let's say the central bank of your country. Think about it. Now, a bank is not worth anything without at least a man in and around it. There must be somebody who is the teller, somebody at the counter. There must be a man who is the customer, at least one customer. There must be one manager. Imagine the bank building without the men. I mean, what you have is a pile of blocks and bricks. Imagine a restaurant without men. There's no man demanding for food, no man cooking the food, nobody thinking about the recipes, nobody cleaning the place. That thing is worth zero. I won't even call it a restaurant. It's a thing. It's worth zero. Nothing. Worth nothing. Nada. So a very good inference is to say that the more men you have around that restaurant, is the more men in terms of employees, in terms of customers, in form of investors. That's what determines how much value. Starting from the point of perception, the perception of value increases from the volume of men, the volume of human beings that you have involved. A school is worth nothing. A bank is worth nothing without men. Your phone is worth nothing without you. It's just a slab of electrical device. The apps, the softwares. Yes, we say tech is the new oil, but tech is worth nothing without a man. That is how resourceful, that's how valuable the soul of a man is. So remove a man from anything and it is worth nothing. A book is worth nothing except there is a man to read and draw value from it. The designer clothes and bags and shoes are worth nothing except there's a man to add, to draw value from it. So when we are talking about, the resources of the earth, gold, oil, natural resources, precious stones, minerals, technology, any resource that you think is high up there, I'm putting it to you, those resources are nothing to be compared to the soul of a man. Because those things have no meaning, no relevance at all. The man is what adds value to them. It's the one that adds essence, weight, and meaning to them. Now you see why God's business-mindedness is saying the soul of a man is worth more than the entire world. Because there's nothing worth anything without a man. Let me say that again. There's nothing worth anything without a man. So a man is what gives essence to anything. Anything on the earth. The earth and everything in it is nothing without a man giving it worth. Money in itself. Yes, I would really like to emphasize that money in itself is worth nothing without a man. A man has to put their faith in the fact that this paper is worth something. And the person on the other end must also agree. That's why it's legal tender. So we must all agree to come to an agreement. We must come to an agreement that this is worth something. Humans must come to an agreement that this is going to be worth this. This is going to be printed this way and it's going to be able to buy this worth of goods. So that money that you think is a grand resource is just a sheet of paper. Without a man, it's a sheet of paper. Without the soul of a man casting faith, reposing confidence in that paper, it's zilch. It's nothing. And once people lose confidence in money, that's what happens in countries where when people lose confidence in money, there's practical chaos. Once they lose confidence in their currency, there's no nation, there's no government that wants that to happen. They make sure that people don't lose confidence in money. Once that happens, the entire economic system comes crashing down. It crumbles. So there's nothing going to be worth anything once a man is removed. Once man is totally eliminated from the equation. Have you given it a thought? When we say we built bridges, we've built skyscrapers, we've built companies, we've built buildings with $2 million. Do you know that money in itself builds nothing? It's actually human beings that moved those stuffs. Human beings manufactured the steels, the blocks, the pipes, the cement, the wires, the skill and wisdom to work it into a building. Papers did not, get up to build. You only got those people to stand up to build because of a motivation, which is the reward of money. That's profound. Money builds nothing except for the fact that there is a man that is willing to build because of the reward of money. So in wrapping up, now that we understand the perspective of God, the business-mindedness of God now, there's what I would like to tell you as an addendum to this episode. And it's a statement that will launch us into the further episodes of this series. It's something about the urgency in the heart of God. There's an urgency. There's a current urgency in the heart of God to get as many souls as possible. There's a eagerness, a willingness and eagerness to draw people to himself, even much more that people are willing to find God. You know that religion is practically what humans do to find God, what human beings do of their own efforts to find God. But beyond the effort of a man, there is an interest, a burning interest, a burning urgency. God himself going after men. This is the centrality of God's heart. This is the centrality of God's perspective. There's a vibrating urgency in the heart of God to reach humans, to reach man. He created the entire world for man, and he created man for himself. So there's this urgency in the heart of God. And God is willing and prepared to use the marketplace, to use the secular space. He wants to get people. Now, in subsequent episodes, we'll talk about how this works, how God intends to do it, what are the principles around it, what are the systems in place by which God does this. Does God jump down from heaven into people's offices, blowing alarms on their heads and saying, "I've been looking for you"? Is that how he does it? Does he appear in their dreams? How does he work it out? How does he expect you to partner with him as a believer? Now, the awareness of this urgency is very important because there's a timeline. The current decade that we are in is a matter of urgency for God. There's a quick, speedy work that God wants to do in this decade. And this speedy work has a tactic. It has a strategy. So let me let you in on this. This current decade that we are in, you'll see God shake things, break conventions through his partners. He will partner with people to do things in one single year that should take the rest of the decade. He will topple things, use unlikely people to gain access to the resources he needs to gain men to himself. I'll say that again. He will use unlikely things and people to gain access to the resources he needs to gain men to himself. You practically see a God-man partnership on an unprecedented level, using natural, regular people from the general perspective, using them to break natural business traditions. And people will know that this is God at work. So we're up to something in this decade, this current decade that we're in. Still quite a number of years to go, and there's a speedy work. So I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts of this episode? What are the things that came home to you? What are the things that struck you? I really want to hear. I want to hear your viewpoints, your perspectives. What are the things that you were able to see while listening? The goal of this episode is to take you on a train of thoughts beyond this episode and see how it applies to you, what you need to do. What are the things that you need to consider that you've not been considering? So I will look forward to you put in a comment. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Share this episode with somebody. Use the follow button on the podcast. You can click the follow button to get notifications when fresh episodes are released. So drop the link to this episode with somebody. Share it with your friends. Share with somebody that you know needs to listen to this. All right. So I would look forward to that. I'll look forward to you doing that. I wish you good success. Take charge.